Hello and welcome to the I Love Me Lab show. My name is Gail Buck, and I'm an NLP Master Life Coach, meditation instructor, and a seeker of happiness. And each week, we're going to bring you inspiring person or message to help you discover additional ways of self-care, self-love, and becoming a healthier, happier you. So thanks for spending time with us today, and let's let the show begin. Hey, well, welcome everybody, and I'd like you to give a really warm welcome for my guest, Shelly Young, and I'm so excited to have Shelley here today. Shelley works, writes, guides, and speaks, and I love this, at the intersection between emotional and physical wellness, motherhood, the impact of substance use and recovery, and her bio is so long, so we're going to get to that piece by piece, but she is a family recovery consultant. She's a director of programs at the Chris Atwood Foundation, and a whole lot more that we're going to dig into. So thank you so much and welcome. Welcome, Shelley.
Thank you for having me, Gail. I'm excited to be here this morning.
Yeah, and after reading all of the current positions that you're involved in, I am even more appreciative that you found time to sit with us today. So, right off the bat, I just, and I've shared with my listeners before a little bit about my journey in this space. And so it's really, as a mother, sometimes it's really hard to take care of ourselves and, find joy in the moments. And I want to get to that, but I wanted you to share a little bit, if you would, of what took you on the journey of being a family recovery consultant. What exactly does that mean? And a little bit about the Chris Atwood Foundation, if you'd like.
Where do I start with this? Where did the path begin? Well, our family recovery came through my son's recovery, and we had for those of you who are experiencing a family member or loved one with substance use, that's a very challenging existence, and a lot of what was happening in our family, I found to be very hard to find help for and get clear, actionable solutions or just actions that would change the way that things were unfolding. And I did a lot of investigation and self-education around addiction and substance use and the impact on the body and the brain, and evidence-based practices and such. And so while my son was sick, I started to recognize the ways in which I was becoming very depleted and in sort of a kind of survival mode type of existence. And as we moved through the whole process, and I did have, some support in that process later on, I found that the response to substance use and to families who are experiencing substance use may not be aligned. Some of the guidance I was getting was not aligned with my values as a mother, or my maternal instinct, or my intuition, or my own, innate wisdom. And so I kind of charted my own path. When people say there's multiple pathways of recovery, I charted a path for our family that was maybe non-traditional and leaned into my own wisdom and science and things that I was learning that were more progressive. So once my son was in recovery, I started looking for places where I could help out, because here that my whole life had been a good portion of my life had been consumed by keeping him alive and trying to influence proper care and treatment. And now I had this energy that had nowhere to go. Or I had some energy because I also have 2 other children. And so I started volunteering with the Chris Atwood Foundation, and I started getting certified to help other families in different ways. And that's where the consultancy came through that. And then, I just started really going out and meeting all kinds of people that worked in treatment and were in recovery, and because I wanted to learn how to create an environment that supported recovery as a mom. So all of it kind of like, and then people just started asking me like, what do I do? And that's really the question I had the whole time, was like, what do I do? And like the things that I was being told weren't necessarily aligned with my mother heart, or, the most important thing to me, which was sustaining a relationship with my son, and keeping our family intact. So, and I grew up in an environment of alcoholism. So the learned response was no response. You just kind of ignored it, until I was 40 and intervened on my mom, uh, and and got her to treatment. For the first time anyone in our family had gone to treatment. My mom was almost 60. Yeah. So that's how I
Yeah.
got here.
Yeah. And there's so many things that you said. I was just like scratching all these notes. And I think that when people are not in this space, they really don't understand that, like, as a parent, for example, or maybe even as a child, and your parent is the one that has the substance use disorder. And I like that you described it as when my son was sick, because it is an illness, and it's an illness that affects the whole family. And you really do, like, if you look at that Maslow's hierarchy, you really do, wherever you are in your life, you really do revert down to survival. It becomes this, not only helping your loved one to live, but yourself as well. I mean, you get right back down to, just basic survival things. I recently went through an exercise. I'm always taking some type of training and coaching and stuff. I love all that kind of stuff. And so it takes you through your life, as you supposedly go up in life. But I could see, nope, I was living in self-actualization and dove right back into survivor mode for several years, because there was, for the families, there was no help that fit me. And like you said, no action things that you could take. Pretty much you're advised to just let them go, let them hit rock bottom, whatever rock bottom means, right? Whatever.
Right, but nobody described that. No one said it looks like this, so this is what, so you'll know when you get there, it looks like this.
Well, oftentimes rock bottom means they die too. I mean, so it's just,
right. That's what I mean. No one
yeah,
said rock bottom looks like, okay, what is that? So I know when it's there, and I know what to do then.
right, right,
So
and stop
I found that to
labeling.
be
Yeah, I hated
very.
that word too. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I was doing what a human parent, what all like animal parents do, is protect their kids and
yeah,
try to keep them alive, right? So I wouldn't necessarily define that as enabling. My survival, like that way I was operating was to keep two people alive, him and myself.
yeah,
And, his particular, the way, what was happening with him was being driven by two very significant losses in his life. And like, he didn't want to live, so if he accidentally died, that was going to be okay with him. And I just was doing everything to try to give him a reason to live. So if I left him, then what would have happened?
right, right,
If I abandoned him, I would have activated all of that trauma in a way that was probably fatal.
right. Yeah, so I just really honor what you're doing, because there hasn't been, I shouldn't say that, because there are support groups and things like that, but something a little different, something that gives you actionable items to take. And
Yeah. And there aren't really support groups for families in like working through their own recovery. It's the I shouldn't say it like that. They're like, when you get to a certain point where you are a lot more it's not the same as if you're going to a 12-step group and you're a person with substance use disorder. There's a lot of celebration there, and like, this is what I did, and this, you know what I mean? It's different there, especially the celebration part. in the other prevalent support groups for family members, it's different.
Yeah.
But they do. But here, like, there was a group I found when he went into recovery called the Family Education Program down in Richmond, and they had professionals come and give, like, present, give an actionable solution, and give everybody a place of self-expression. So it was like the perfect combo.
Wow. Yeah.
Of things. Yeah. So I did that up here for a while.
Now, I read that Google asked you what they should do to help families more impacted by substance use, which I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. So what resulted, or what happened with that?
So I went to a big symposium in DC with Facebook, Twitter, and Google, the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, which is now the Center on Addiction, or Partnership to End Addiction. Anyway, they changed their name. They asked me to speak there and just talk about, how I used certain things to help, or what I, just tell our story and what I thought would be impactful in a way to help families better educate and find actionable solutions and be supported. So from that moment, that event, Google then asked me to come out for a small round table of people, and they basically said, what do you think we could do to better help families? And I said, well, you're Google, that's what I used you for, but okay.
That's pretty
So
cool.
I just told them, that I actually sent them my entire history of how I started with my mom's, like, finding treatment for my mom, and how, like, where they intersected in every part of treatment, recovery, my son's, when he was sick, and, my education. And I just laid it all out for them. And I'm like, this is what happened. So if, I Google these things, if something could come up about recovery, or something could come up about the impact, or like an actionable thing, you know what I mean? So there are things that come up now, like directs people to the partnership. Has free parent coaching that is evidence-based, and it will direct you there. They did a huge, and this is not just from my own input, but other people's input too, Recovery Month campaign, and they highlighted recovery in the little Google thing, during Recovery Month, and they have they're doing some pilot programs around the country with.
So this is Google is doing this, or who is doing this?
Google.
Wow.
In
See,
partnership.
In partnership with, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
In partnership with several organizations, like several recovery organizations, including the Partnership to End Addiction. I think that's what it's called now. They merged. The Partnership for Drug-Free Kids and Center on Addiction merged.
So that's really cool, because I never thought of Google that way. I just think of Google. I love Google. I Google everything like everybody else. But I think of it as this big machine where you get information, and it's a big money machine for somebody else. I didn't think about them contributing in this way. So it's good to know that they do. And there's probably a lot of ways that they contribute, that they're
There's a lot. It was, with Google Health, there's a lot of ways that they contribute. And what happened was they recognized that they were part of a bigger problem with the treatment industry. And so they recognized that they had to do something, with the advertising, with predatory practices of treatment, like false treatment programs or fraudulent treatment programs, preying on people who are in crisis. But so they decided to really do something and take the financial hit that it takes to not earn those ad dollars and help the recovery field.
That's so interesting. And so this is kind of going in a different direction where I thought we were going to go, but I think it's important. I think it's so important because, from my own personal experience, I know that it's a very painful journey just the nut, right, which is your loved one going through this experience and being in that survival mode. But then layered on top of that, you have a heap of judgment all the time. I have stories of getting my son to the hospital and the nurses being disgusted with him. They knew he was high on something or on a ventilator again or whatever, and they were equally disgusted with me because I was his mother, and I'd be like, wow. To them,
Yeah.
I am like the bottom of the pond on the scum of the whatever earth because I'm his mother, so I must have contributed to this. And so
My fault. Right.
it's my fault. And it's like, I did this. And it's like, so you have that judgment. And then on top of that, you have, like in the movie industry, which is surprising because there's so many people that have died, from substance use disorder, where when in the movie, in the play, and they're talking about like he's a homeless drug addict, like that's the worst thing on the planet. And it's like, and when you're in that space, it gets you in the heart. And I don't know if they realize how painful that is because you're depicting somebody who's ill. And that's why they're in this situation, and it spreads to the rest of the family too. So there's all this layering of pain.
Yeah. Yeah. I when my son was sick, my daughter's best friend, who they were 12 at the time, was going through treatment for brain cancer.
Mm.
And because we were so intimately involved with that, I experienced how the family was treated by the medical system, by the community, by, the larger like pediatric cancer community. And I started to recognize like, okay, my son also has something happening with his brain, the way Lisa has something happening with her daughter's brain. And I'm going to treat this like I'm going to treat him the way Lisa's treating Amelia. Right. And I started like asking my community and asking my friends and asking people to treat me the same as they were treating them. And it really helped to, with the judgment part, to say like, my my son has a brain disorder, and
Mm.
I need you to treat me the same. And you don't get that everywhere, but when I started like kind of not really demanding it, but like holding it in a way that the way I was holding it, like that's how I'm going to treat it. And I'm when I talk about it, that's how I'm going to talk about it. And I think that helped me a lot, was to look at it from that perspective. Like how do people get treated when their kid has brain cancer or a heart condition or something like that? And so me shifting my way of being with it doesn't mean I don't still cringe at like when people use the word addict or you know crazy or things like that. But it did help me a lot, and I was able to like kind of then start to feel the support of my community, like
Mhm.
my really close friends, or the people I was really closely connected to in my neighborhoods. At least they got the message
Right,
and they
right.
got the kind of,
So you could
I
feel
kind of
support.
educated them as
Yeah.
I was educating myself. Yeah.
So, what are some of the things that? So, this podcast is about, it's love. I love me laboratory, right? And finding ways to self care and self love, and you know, really give ourselves, honor ourselves, and the right to love ourselves and live in happiness as well. In these circumstances, like when because you work with parents, in this situation, and what are some of the skills or actionable items that you are able to help them with so that they can maybe not be in survival mode and start getting up the Maslow's hierarchy again and not living in this I just got to survive place.
Yeah. I think the first thing is helping people recognize that they're in survival mode, right? And when we're in survival, we're in a different place in our brain, right? We go into a totally different place in our brain, and recognizing that the impact of what you're going, like the stress and the impact of what you're going through has an impact on your body. So there's um, huge surges of cortisol and adrenaline, and that has impact on your body and your energy and your way of being. And so, one, recognizing that. Two, teaching people how to emotionally regulate, um, and recognizing, like, as a self-care practice, learning about emotional regulation and nervous system regulation uh, makes a just phenomenal difference in your health, right? And your body and the way that you can navigate things. So, people talk about things like empowerment and being in your power and taking care of yourself and taking a bubble bath. And, like, I'm talking about self-care things that are like so like much more less surface, less like commodified, like, not to like put on your eye mask and do that. That's great. Put on your eye mask and your face mask and all that and pamper yourself. But I'm looking at self care like, how are we going to tend to our body while we're in this? Like, I called them episodes because sometimes it was manageable and other times it was like crisis episode. So, how are we going to first regulate our bodies, regulate our nervous system and our brain, tend to our bodies so that we can respond and not be like reactive, and so that we feel strong, right? So that we feel strong, that we haven't fried our nervous system, we haven't fried um, our mind with
And
like the
that can have
looping.
long-term physical effects as well, right? If you're staying in that space without finding ways to regulate yourself, it
Yeah,
can
I
create.
have an autoimmune because of it. So that's where autoimmune diseases originate. Is
From
these
carrying
high
stress for a long
high
period of
loads
time.
of, yeah, cortisol and adrenaline, and it will fry some part of your body. Like, your body's going to say enough, like enough.
Mm.
So, like, the most important thing, like in that Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is tending to your body, making sure you're getting good nutrition, making sure, like, the real basics. When I talk to people about this,
Getting
I'm like,
proper food.
everybody's going to go, really? Like, that's what I'm doing? I thought we were trying to solve this problem. But the way to solve the problem is to really start with strengthening your mind and your body, right? Or the way to find your happiness within your chaos is by having your healthy, strong body and recognizing what certain things are doing to your body. So, water, sleep, sunshine, rest, nutritious food, right? And then
Yeah.
learning how to regulate your nervous system with your breath, with um, movement or soothing, depending on what your body's asking for. Like, I think the biggest self-care practice are when you're activated or you're feeling depleted are, do I need to move or do I need to soothe? And, to calm your nervous system or to discharge energy, right?
And the best way of discharging energy is movement. Are you a yoga instructor or you practice yoga a lot? Or
Both.
both?
I practiced yoga first. Like, yoga um, really helped me get out of the looping thoughts that happen because you're in so much worry and you're so much terror, right? We talked about
Yeah.
this one time. Like, you're in terror, and I think yoga helped take me out of terror. And then I learned other ways to recognize, like, oh, this is a terror, or I'm activated. And do I need to move or do I need to soothe? So movement can be running, dancing, shaking, even tapping, like something that discharges energy that's kind of wound up in your body. Soothing, like, people can pick what it is that soothes their body, and sometimes it's food from your childhood, or um, music, or laying under a weighted blanket and putting the eye mask on, but things that feel soothing. I have a pair of yoga pants that I've had for like 8 years. And as soon as I put those pants on, I'm like, my whole nervous system relaxed. Or as soon as I get on my mat, like as soon as I roll that mat, my yoga mat out, I feel my body just go, oh, here we are,
Isn't that
and
interesting? Yeah.
you have to start to be aware of what those things are. Sometimes I think I just need to go lay in the grass. Like if I lay down on the earth, I'm going to feel better.
So we have these like anchors, right? So certainly in that space, there's all these triggers and anchors that will put us into that terror or despair mode. But you can find others that also will put you in a soothing mode, like laying in the grass or like rolling out your mat, which all of it, just kind of anchors and triggers this other response. So
Yeah.
finding what are those triggers or developing them, developing the anchors for yourself.
And noticing like, oh, this actually feels soothing, or this actually feels relaxing, Oh, I kind of don't feel like this, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And now I can recognize, you get more discerning, but I can recognize when that stress hormone is starting to pulse in my body. I can tell. And it's like, okay, stop. Let's take a pause here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's hugely important. Like noticing, and even noticing, like, where is it starting from? Is it starting in my chest? Is it starting in my gut? And noticing it, so when it starts, you're able to, nip it in the bud by doing something different. And the first step is recognizing it, right? So that you're able to, okay, let's not dive into that. I remember telling my mom during one particular time of this journey where it was always very intense, and I would just remember crying and saying, I'm just in so much despair. And she would say, despair, because it really is such a big word. And then I'd be like, yes. I couldn't think of any other word. It's like this whirlwind, right? So learning things to get out of it. Something that I found very useful that I do all the time is that and it took turning that into an anchor, that my bed is my sanctuary, and I value my sleep. Nobody interrupts my sleep. And I have a little notepad by my bed, and if I'm churning and worrying about something, I write it down and I give myself permission to put it on the page, because there is nothing you can do about it at this moment. And this is the time where I give myself permission not to worry about anything or anybody. It took practice, but I sleep well, and I think sleep is hugely important.
Well, it's probably one of the most impactful things on our mental health, no matter what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not sleeping well, and I get it, I did it. Like as family members, we were on like this high alert. Like I slept with my head hovering this high above the pillow. Like my neck hurt so bad during that time,
Yeah.
because I was ready just to like jump into action, But one of the things I did to protect my sleep back then was I said to my son, look, we have school and work and stuff here, so I'm going to lock the garage door at 10 p.m. every night, and I'm not going to unlock it until 7 o'clock in the morning. So if you don't get here before 10, you're going to have to stay with a friend or something, because that is, I need that. Like I can't be disrupted at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, in weird ways, he honored it, but, and my girls were able to get their proper rest too. But it was like the first thing I did, like my first like act of, I need this,
This,
and,
this time is my sleep. And so you're able to regenerate physically and emotionally and mentally.
yeah,
Right? Give
yeah,
yourself a break.
yeah. So that, like I said, it starts with really basic things, and then we kind of progress up from to start to look at our own patterns of responses to things, and I think, and then undoing a lot of our, like, right, I guess looking at the ways in which we're like torturing our own selves, like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned something at the beginning that kind of lit the light bulb for me, about judgment. Like, I think as mothers, we carry the propensity for so much guilt,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so an act of self-care is really like digging into your things, like, okay, this guilt, what is it about? Why do I like, is it mine to carry, right? Like, what parts did I play? And if you played parts in things, then you work on that with a trusted friend, a clinician, a peer, whatever, whoever your support network is. But um, you try to recognize like those kind of things and heal it, right?
Yeah.
Although I think mother guilt is always going to be there. Like, it just
Oh my gosh. It's
comes
like,
with
I know, I think
birth.
that when God made us, or whatever your belief system is, that was part of the genes that he put in us. All this guilt that bubbles up over everything. And
Yeah.
you know, in my particular journey, which is still in process, whatever you want to call it, it's still in play.
Yeah.
But there was a time where I couldn't laugh. I retreated from my relationships. I retreated from my business, from everything, because I felt, I guess it would be guilty. How can I even try to be happy? How can I even think about going on a date or romance or having, cocktails with a girlfriend when my child is in this circumstance? How can I do that? And so even allowing yourself to love yourself, to really love yourself, and be happy and have these beautiful moments and do what you can, but take care of yourself too, because you'll be a better person also for everybody else
Yeah.
around you, right? For your other children and for that child too.
Yeah.
So
I think it's hard when I think that like love yourself thing for me was hard because I thought I didn't really ever consider that I didn't care about myself, or like the ways in which I was behaving would indicate that I didn't necessarily love myself. But I also don't know that um, growing up in an environment that was like chaotic and emotionally unavailable,
mhm,
that I knew what that actually felt like,
yeah,
right? So, like, what is a how do we know when when we're actually being self-loving, right? Like, how do I know when I'm not, if I wasn't really primed for that? So it's almost a learned, or it is a learned thing, if or a self-defined thing, maybe. Do you find that people have to
well,
self-define what love feels like and looks like and sounds like and smells like to them?
yeah. And I think if you do a little exercise where, like, go from a bird's eye view and look at you and look at what your day looks like and look and feel what that person is feeling. And let's pretend that you really love that person. What would
Hmm.
you have that person do? What would you wish for that person? Right.
Yeah.
And then you're going to notice if that person is, curled up in a fetal position watching TV because it's a form of escapism. Is that what you want for that person?
Yeah.
Or do you want to pick them up and say, let's go for a walk in the park. Let me give you a hug, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of looking at it like that. And let's go. I want to tickle you. I want to make you laugh. I mean, whatever the case might be, but looking at yourself from outside so that you can see, are you loving yourself? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you honoring yourself? Are you seeing you like other people who love you do?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah. And I don't know where along the line, probably because our journeys take us to different things. Um, I have always been I've gone through periods of tremendous sadness and worry and terror, like you say. I really like that word because it's very applicable.
Mm-hmm.
But in finding ways to self-nurture, I've been, I divorced when I was just turning 40, so I'm 64 now, so all that time. And so I've learned to, really take care of myself and, romance myself. I mean, I'll light the candle and have a glass of wine and a nice, pretty dinner just for me. And my mom, she laughs and she told me that that's my superpower. And I'm like, what? And she goes, you know how to love yourself. And that's actually why I came up with this podcast. And I thought, I do, because I pay attention, but it's been a work in progress. It's been noticing, that anxiety and deciding, okay, I'm not going to live there, because when I live there, all of a sudden I lose my friends, I lose my finances, I start gaining weight again, all these things. I get more wrinkles, my hair gets white. I mean, all these things, that happens. So it's just, I think it's hugely important.
Yeah. It's important to find the things that feel, I like the word romantic to you, right?
I totally romance myself all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I went on a retreat, and I was like at the very, very, I was at a place where I was like, I will do anything right now for this to be different, for me to feel different, like anything. And I signed up for a retreat, a solo retreat with a person I didn't even know, like this will probably sound really strange, but anyway, it was for a weekend, and I went to her house, and she like put me in a bath.
Oh, wow.
She like lit all the candles and put me in the bath, and she turned on the music, and she was like, just be here, we'll do a fire when you come out. And I was
that
like,
was romancing yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I've lived in a house with a gigantic bathtub, or not gigantic, but like the kind of bathtub they have in houses. And for 20 years, I never got in my bathtub. I put my kids in there, but I never shut the door, lit the candles, and oh yeah, I did last night. I've done it 2 nights in a row, actually. Yeah, there's always music. There's always put the salt and the oils and all those things, and it relaxes my nervous system. Like, I still work in this arena, so I'm still experiencing people in distress, and families in distress, and people that work with people I'm a director of people that work with people we have a harm reduction program, so that people are, either in crisis, in active use, or all different kinds of things, like healthcare things. So sometimes I have to dunk myself in the bath to bring my nervous system down.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that, because I see you also the Star Family Program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you're facilitator at an adult detention center as well.
Yeah.
You're on the Fairfax County Opiate Task Force. I mean, you're just so involved in this. So how do you, I don't want this to sound wrong, but how do you take it off so you don't take it on? So you're there and your support and because I used to do energy healing, and I stopped doing that because for some reason I felt like I was taking on everybody else's energy, and I didn't know how to properly. I don't know how to get.
Discharge.
I don't know how to get.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So how do you do that?
I have to. So sometimes I have to go away. So that first retreat spawned 4 retreats for a whole quarterly retreats. And that's a whole podcast worth of stories. That was all very interesting. But it could be just I have to shut my door on my office and not come in and get on my computer at all, or I have to go away from it. But on a regular daily basis, like I have to keep hours. And I have to put space in my day. So I recognize that cannot for 40 hours a week focus on this, right? So I have to put space in between. So I have regular rituals, rhythms, and routines. 3 R's. That's what I call them. I learned that from my friend Jen. She's the master of the 3 R's. And I do those things. Like I always have breakfast. I always take my dog out for a walk every single day. I get outside so I get fresh air and walk him. I get on my yoga mat. I don't do that every day. Because sometimes stuff gets in the way, but that's not a good self-care thing to say. Anyway, but I do have regular rhythms, rituals, and routines that support my body and my mind. And that's not to say that it's not hard. Sometimes I don't use substances, so there's no like escape hatch type thing. I did stop using alcohol when my son went into treatment because I wanted to see what it was like to be a sober person, and and then I just never drank again, and I don't pretty much won't. I don't like the way it feels in my body, and it also disrupts my spiritual connections. So I don't drink, but I have to find different ways to kind of. Music does it for me, and weirdly, like playing the same songs over and over sometimes just does something very like unwinds everything for me.
Yeah. And I think it's also important when you say that you're not perfect with that all the time. It's also important to love about ourselves that we don't have to be so regimented and perfect about it all the time, and sometimes we're regimented and sometimes we're not. And I love that about me, so.
Yeah. I get to choose. That's the other part. Like when you're in an environment of mental health and substance use, there's a part of you that feels, or for me, I'll speak for myself, trapped and has no choice, right? So when I can practice choice, I feel less disempowered, right? So I can choose. Yeah, I can choose to go to yoga, or I can choose to lay in the grass. Like it doesn't have to be rigid. Rigidity is not good for my body either. So, or my mind. So as much as I can be in choice, when I start to feel like I have no choice, that's when I know like there's some self-care thing that needs to happen. Some kind of nurture or care needs to happen. Because that puts me back in choice. Like, oh, I have a choice here. I can commiserate or like whatever. I can do this or I can do this. I do have choices, but I didn't feel like I had choices when I was like so wrapped up in
Stuck in this cycle, right?
If you can disrupt a cycle, you're really moving. Like you're breaking patterns. You're breaking the thing that like makes us sick, right? The thing that makes us sick.
So I just wanted to let you know that, no, I would actually love to hear more about your retreat. And I don't think any of these retreats are weird. I've done so many. And my mantra for a while became, you'd be there and you'd be in a situation, it's like, oh, stupid Gail, stupid Gail, stupid Gail. It's like, what was I thinking? Just some really crazy experiences that for all of them make me look back and laugh. And a lot of them, I think all of them, you can pull just loving growth and awesome things out. But sometimes you can be put in situations that it's like, like even when you're talking about shaking your body, I went to a couple meditation things far away at a retreat. And one of the meditations is, it's this whole intense body shake so that the oxygen level changes in your brain and you start having, delusions and whatever. And it's so funny because I saw a documentary about some cult and they were doing that. And it's funny for me when I can see these things and think, I've done that. Yeah, I did that, but we didn't get naked. I did that.
Yeah.
It's just, for me, no, that was really scary. But it's just, it's just,
Really scary for me.
oh my gosh. One time I was going on this, my mom was worrying about me because I was just gravitating to every kind of thing that I could to make me feel better. And it was a meditation yoga retreat up in the mountains in North Carolina somewhere. And so she insisted that she was going to go with me, and she was just a hoot. But anyway, there was one night I wanted to have some energy work done. And so they had me, now this is out in the mountains, and there was like really no electricity but candlelight and, vegan food and all this pretty cool stuff. And so I had to drive to where they told me, and it was this little tiny, I guess you'd call it like a church, but it would be like a one-room tiny little church with a chapel in the middle of the woods. And I remember getting out there, and it's completely dark, just by the stars. There's the bed that I'm going to lay on, and I'm there waiting for who's ever going to come to do my cleanse. And I'm looking at the windows and the moon thinking, oh my gosh, this is like in the horror movie when that werewolf just comes breaking through the glass, and I'm sitting here in the middle of the woods, and if anything happens, nobody knows where I am. Just kind of crazy, but it's all good
That's
stuff.
how I felt when I went to her house. She was like, go down the basement door, I'll meet you there. And I was like, nobody knows where I am. Oh, well. Like, that's how bad I felt that I was like, oh, well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, well, if something
I hope
happens,
this works.
I know.
I hope this works.
If something happens, it happens. Yeah. Which we don't want to be to. We don't want to get to that.
No, we need to be safe. We need to be safe. But I will say, like, those periods of where I took a break from what was happening and just kind of had to go, okay, I have to go. Were very nourishing. Like they were fortifying, I guess is the word that I'm trying to use, because I was very depleted. And I let people feed me, and I rested, and I just didn't take care of anything, and I let people take care of me. And I think that was something I never did. Like, I never let people take care of me. And it's probably how I learned, like, what it feels like to take care of me, or like what care feels like, so that I could do it myself, right? Yeah. Because I'd been taking care of myself for a really long time in a certain kind of, adaptive way, right? Mm-hmm. The way we adapt to taking care of ourselves, but not like allowed people to come in and, make my food and feed me and give me a massage and
loving you in that way, just surrounding you with care and nurture. Yeah.
And not having to take care of it. What it was like an absence, also taking me out of the paradigm or the environment where I'm on alert to take care of everyone and everything, right? So always being like, I'm here. Which one of you needs me? Yeah. So that's what the retreats really did for me, and to give my mind space, right? So I could start to see where I had choice, right?
Yes.
And where I had choice and where I had responsibility, right? So both. And I think taking care of yourself also is recognizing where you have responsibility, or where you have where you have work that you have to do too, and how can you take care of yourself while you're doing that kind of work. Yeah. But during that time, it was also challenging, and it's still that way, challenging. I lost a lot of friendships during that period.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard. especially at this age, to have established these long-term relationships with women and them not be there in the time when you probably needed them the most because your hard was too hard for them to watch or
Right.
bear, or it was disrupting their fun. So, or could potentially disrupt their fun. And, just the kind of unsolicited, non-evidence-based advice that you would get in those situations is challenging. So
that's a very nice way of putting it. And yes, yeah.
I had my own sort of self-imposed, I don't want to call it isolation, but like sabbatical of being with people. And then right when I was like, okay, I'm going to start like connecting with people again, it was quarantine. And I was like, no, I've been forced back into my cave. And I've been divorced for 10 years and I haven't had relationships, or I had a couple, dates here and there, but I haven't even tried. And I'm coming upon a fully empty nest very shortly. So I feel like, oh my God, what am I going to do with myself and like all my relationships that grew out of connection with my kids, like proximity, like the people I was sitting with in the stands or volunteering alongside of in the schools. Like everybody's lives go different ways. And then when you get divorced, it's a totally another paradigm of things. It's
just all this unraveling of the way I think there's a lot of it's supposed to be like this or it should be like that, and accepting what it is and embracing what it is. I
like cultural norms and social norms and things like that. Like, and who am I if I'm not a that or this or a part of a pair or a team or a group?
It's supposed to be like this, right? It was supposed to be, but it's not. And it's fine that it's not. But how do I wrap my head around? I don't know. Just looking at things from a different perspective.
And sometimes I'm like, this isn't what I wanted, or this isn't how I thought it would be. And then I'm like, I didn't even know how I thought it would be. What am I talking about? I thought it would be, I don't even know if I thought about what it would be like. I don't know. I just know that I couldn't be what I was being. So I had to stop being that. You know what I mean? And another choice point, right? Yeah. So I feel like I'm in a weird place. Maybe it's not weird. Maybe lots of women are going through it I'm about to turn 57 and, I feel like I have a lot to offer, a lot of different things, like my work and such. And I want some fun connections, like I want to do fun stuff. I just want to do fun stuff and eat good food.
Well, you have come to the right place, lady, because I absolutely plan on staying in touch with you because I think there's a lot of things that we can do, that we can talk about. I would love it if you came back and did another show. Would you be open to that? Yeah, I mean, there's just the whole subject of, being in, over 50 and divorced and an empty nester and now what? Because that's a whole, personally, I think it's an exciting, fun chapter.
Like I'm looking at it as like, I am going to have so many choices. And also, oh my gosh, like my baby is leaving, so like it's like a weird.
All these things, I know, all these things.
My hobby has been taking care of my kids, right? My entertainment used to be drinking with people. I don't do that anymore. So like what, how do we play when we're like, what do we get to play now? What's fun? You know what I mean?
Well, I think that we should explore that. We should have a podcast about that too, but also explore it often because there's a few things that I'm thinking of doing with women in this space or people, couples, and, I mean, men and women in this space that I think would be a lot of fun and just kind of, it's time to go have fun, right? Time to play. So
yeah, like I've done all my work. Like I've done all kinds of self work. I want to play.
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up. We went a little bit way over actually, but I don't care because I loved every minute of it. And
that was fun. I'm having fun. This is fun. This is fun.
I know.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. And I wanted to ask you, the final question is, if you could give a recommendation, a word of, wisdom, something, one thing that you could let other people know that you do to self-care and self-love, what would be that one thing?
The one thing I do, I think, is stick to those 3 R's that my friend Jen Lemon taught me, which is establishing rhythms, rituals, and routines that take care of your mind, your body, and your spirit. And you know what those are, right? So for me, it's eating good food, going to yoga, and getting outside, doing the things that just make me feel good. So that's my one thing, is actually the 3 R's, right?
I like it.
Yeah.
Shelley, thank you so much for being here. And for those of you that are listening, if you want to reach out to Shelley, how can they reach you?
They can reach me on my email, shelley@shelleyyoung.com. And I am in the process of launching a Substack where I'll be writing. I'm writing. That's my dreamy dream.
Is that the Mother?
Yes.
Yes, I already signed. I already subscribed today. So, and we didn't even get.
You're the first person I've even told that I'm doing that. So, thanks for being my early adopter.
Right. I even signed up because there was some Twitter thing, so I could tweet it. So I actually even signed up on Twitter during the process so I could tweet it. So I'm here to support. I'm excited.
Oh my gosh, you're the best. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you. And I hope to talk to you soon. Thanks so much for listening to this conversation. If you enjoyed it and want more information on our guests and resources, please visit ilovemelab.com. And please, if you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share with a friend. Hey, there's more great episodes to come. So until next time.